Murray disappeared on Monday, February 9th, 2004. When a person disappears without a trace, often the most critical information is hidden in their actions and words from the days before they vanished. Maura Murray's last known whereabouts may hold the clues to what happened to her.
I thought everything was okay.
Maura Murray is a 21-year-old college student. It seems like she has everything going for her.
They were talking of getting married.
She was on the dean's list.
But the mysterious events surrounding the days before her disappearance puzzle those who know and love her.
I don't have the slightest idea what was in her mind.
She leaves her dorm room in Massachusetts and drives to the next state. Nobody knows where she is headed.
I don't know why she came to New Hampshire. I don't know. I'd be guessing the same with everybody else.
When her car veers off this dark and windy highway, she seems to disappear into thin air.
Our Maura is gone. It was like a nightmare.
It's Saturday morning, February 7th, 2004. Fred Murray is driving to pick his daughter Maura up from the University of Massachusetts, Amherst. Little does he know that in only 3 days, she will disappear.
When Maura got to UMass, I'd go up there once a month or so. In fact, the last weekend I saw her, I was up at UMass and we went searching to find a car. So get her a car, you know, to go to do her nursing clinical trips and stuff like that.
21-year-old Maura Murray has juggled a busy college schedule, running track and cross country, and working 2 part-time jobs. Besides studying, she must do work for her nursing degree that requires long drives from campus.
Now, Maura had a car with her in Amherst, but the car was falling apart. It was really time for her to get a new car.
Maura's rundown car will figure prominently in her disappearance 3 days later.
And we had one picked out, and we're going to go up there next weekend and get it. But that didn't happen. It would have been safe. I wish I had bought it that weekend.
According to Fred Murray and Maura's friends at the time at UMass, it seemed to be a pretty normal weekend. Her father was visiting, everything seemed fine.
And that night in Amherst, we went to the Amherst brew pub and had supper. Whenever we went to some place, especially if it's a college town or something like that, if we could find a brew pub, we would go to it, you know.
But the events of that weekend would create a mystery even her closest friends can't explain.
Maura and I grew up in a small town called Hanson, Massachusetts. We had a tight group of friends and we stayed close all the way through high school and into college and always stayed in touch.
There was 7 of us that were always together. If something was really bothering Maura, she definitely would have come out and one way or the other hinted at something was wrong.
The last time we hung out with Maura, everything seemed totally normal. We didn't notice anything different with her.
Maura's life seems to be on the right track, both at school and with her family. Her friends know Maura is particularly close to her father.
The first basketball team Maura and I played on, our dads were both coaches. Maura and her dad were very close growing up. She lived with her mom, but her dad was here picking her up for practices, bringing her to games.
Her parents divorced when she was 6 years old, and she remained living with her mother, but she maintained a very close relationship with her father.
It seemed like the last weekend Maura and her dad had spent together was pretty typical of their relationship.
After enjoying their brewhouse dinner that Saturday night, Fred lets Maura borrow his new car. She drops him off at his motel. Then the weekend takes a sudden and unexpected turn.
Sunday morning, Maura woke me up. She had come back, you know, during the night and told me that she'd had an accident in the car.
She was involved in an accident in Hadley, Mass, where she went off the road and struck a set of guardrails. She was driving her father's new car at the time and did about $10,000 worth of damage.
Well, Mara was upset, and it haunts me, but, you know, I think she felt she let her father down.
At 4:49 a.m. Sunday morning, a distraught Maura calls her long-distance boyfriend, Billy Rausch, who is stationed in Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Billy later shares the conversation with his mother, Sharon.
So she calls Billy, and he talked with her. He calmed her down. And then he promised her that he would call her back later in the day.
Maura and Billy have been dating since 2001. They met while both were attending West Point.
From the moment I met her, I knew that she loved my son. And of course, that endeared her to me.
When Maura decided to transfer from West Point to UMass, Billy and Maura continued their relationship, spending many holidays and summers with Billy's family.
By the time that she was here over the holidays in 2003 and early 2004, they shared that, you know, they were talking of getting married.
I think Mara looked at Sharon as if she was a second mom. She always went out there, and we knew that she was excited to go.
To describe Mara as a challenge, I don't want to say she's complex, but she was so multifaceted, you know? She could be serious, she could be so funny and witty. She always had this little soft giggle, and she was very soft-spoken, but she was fun-loving. She loved life, she loved to laugh.
The next day, when Fred Murray sees his daughter, she's still upset about the accident.
I drove her back to the dorm. I could see she was still upset. I told her it would be all right. It was going to be covered. It would be okay, you know? And she went into the dorm, and that's the last I ever saw of her, which haunt me forever.
A few hours later, at 11:26 p.m., Maura speaks on the phone with her father, one final time.
Checked on my insurance. I called her back, said, you know, we're okay. The insurance will be taken care of, so I'm not going to be out a lot of money. I said, you're going to have to make out accident reports, probably in triplicate. So get the 3 forms from the police station or wherever you have to get them, and call me tomorrow night, you know, 8 o'clock.
But Maura's call to her father will never take place, and her actions will surprise everyone who knows her.
There was no death in the family. She did lie.
In the weekend before she goes missing, UMass nursing student Maura Murray has been in an accident after borrowing her dad's car, but her father thinks that crisis is past.
The car would get fixed, and my insurance would cover it. And so Maura's all right, so I figured if this is the most trouble this kid ever causes me in 21 years, then I am lucky. I'm a lucky guy.
But what Maura does later that night, she doesn't share with her father or any of her friends.
We had an opportunity to look at some of the files on her computer. She had looked at some sites specific to rental properties in the White Mountains region of New Hampshire. She finished up working on her computer at about 4 a.m.
Maura continues her online search the next day.
It appears she got back on her computer on the afternoon of the night, and during the course of a couple hours, searched several sites to include getting directions from Amherst, Mass. To the Burlington, Vermont area.
Here she was looking for different directions up to New Hampshire and I think onto Burlington, Vermont. I mean, it would seem a little strange, especially since classes had just started.
No one knows what Maura was planning the day before she disappears, but her last cell phone calls leave clues.
We have Maura's cell phone records because her cell phone was an additional line to Billy's cell phone. So, you know, Billy not only gave her a phone for Christmas, he paid the monthly bill. When his bill came, then, you know, we automatically saw all the calls that she made.
At 12:55 p.m. Monday, February 9th, 2004, Maura calls the owner of a Bartlett, New Hampshire condo rental. Her father recognizes the town. It's a place Maura knew well.
She was going to Bartlett. There's no question. She was going to Bartlett, and that's what she knows. She's familiar with. She stayed in every place in Bartlett. She can get a room there, and even if she can't, she knows other places. Maura has been coming up here since she was born.
Maura grew up every summer and parts of winters and springs and falls going all up through New Hampshire. She's hiked so many of those mountains up there with her dad.
They wanted to do the highest mountains as best they could, and she loved hiking.
Maura's friends know her to be very athletic, excelling at many sports.
Maura played just about every sport possible growing up. Maura and I were always on the same teams, and we were captains of the cross-country team senior year. But she was always the one leading the pack and winning most of just about all of the races, and including doing top finishes in the state.
She was recruited to West Point for her running ability.
After transferring from West Point, she attended the University of Massachusetts Amherst, where she ran track and cross country. Back at her dorm room that February afternoon, just hours before her disappearance, Maura sends an email to her boyfriend.
He did receive an email from her that day, around 1 or 1:30, and in that email, she told him that she loved him and that she was sorry she hadn't returned his messages from the day before. She hadn't felt like talking much of anyone.
Whatever Maura's state of mind is, she makes a number of phone calls that afternoon.
Maura made another phone call to 1-800-GO-STOW, which is a reservation phone line for hotels in the Stowe, Vermont area. But research shows that at the time that Maura called, the line was actually out of order. So Maura could listen to listings for different hotels, but she could not actually make a reservation on this line. But that just shows that Maura, again, was looking for a place to stay in the Vermont, New Hampshire area.
Then, 13 minutes after phoning the Go Stowe hotline, Maura calls her boyfriend, but gets his voicemail.
She didn't say much other than promising to call him. Sorry she missed him.
Maura hasn't told anyone she's thinking about leaving town. She finally shares her plans, but it's not with anybody close to her.
Maura had sent an email to her nursing professors. I don't know word for word, but in it she told them that she needed to be away for a week due to a death in the family.
Her friends know there has been no death in Maura's family.
We thought it was a little bizarre when we first heard that Maura had sent an email to professors saying, "There's a death in the family, I have to take off for a week."
Not really like her, but if something was going on, she did need to get away, then kind of explains it. Why she didn't call one of us, I don't know. I mean, maybe we could have helped her out. Figured something out together.
She did lie, but, you know, Maura was not a liar.
Around 3:30, we assume Maura got into her car at UMass Amherst and left the campus. Her first stop was to an ATM machine where she withdrew $280. That pretty much depleted Maura's account with that bank. Maura then stopped at a local liquor store. At the liquor store, Maura bought a bottle of Kahlua, a bottle of Bailey's, a bottle of vodka, and a box of red wine.
Maura's stop to the liquor store is known, because the receipt of what she purchases is later found in her wrecked car.
Kahlua, Baileys, and vodka are known for making a White Russian. No one understands why Maura bought such a large quantity of alcohol for if she was traveling alone.
There was surveillance camera at the ATM, so we could see still photographs where she walked up to the ATM, withdrew the money, and there didn't appear to be anybody in the background or anywhere that we could see from the camera photos.
It's 4:37 p.m., and phone records show Maura checks her voicemail. This is the last known call from Maura's cell phone. Presumably, at this point in the afternoon, she's now driving towards New Hampshire.
She had an extremely adventurous spirit. When we first heard that Maura had taken off and gone up to New Hampshire, it seemed a little odd to us, but not totally, because I remember a day in high school that she decided she just wanted to go off and do something different, so she hopped on the train herself, went to Boston, didn't necessarily tell us, but by the end of the day she was back after all of us had been spending the whole day trying to track her down.
The next day, Maura's father will hear the worst news of his life.
Your daughter's in an accident. The police don't seem to know where she is.
It's Monday afternoon, February 9th, 2004. Momentarily, this 21-year-old nursing student will go missing. It seems she's planning a getaway, but connecting the clues is complicated.
As to why Maura left, I don't know. In my position as father, you would think that maybe there would have been something said, but I have no hint. I thought everything was okay, you know?
Some think perhaps Maura is not doing well at school, and that's why she's leaving.
I wasn't aware of any stuff like school troubles. She was on the dean's list in a very difficult program, a nursing program. Hard to get in, hard to do well in.
When it came to academics, she was always very serious and one of the top members of our class by the time we all graduated.
The recipients this year are the 5 top-ranking students in the senior class. The awards are $400 to Maura Murray.
I think everybody felt that she was doing okay at school, but there also were some issues, I think, that were causing her great stress in her private life.
Around 5 p.m., Monday, February 9th, this Dean's List student is on the road, driving a rundown car hours away from her dorm, without telling anybody where she is going.
I knew she was having car trouble. We had gotten her a AAA membership with the long-distance towing because we were concerned about her.
It was pretty cold. The road was slippery.
Fred Murray is tracing his daughter's last known steps.
She went west on, I would say, what is it, 116 to Route 91, which we're on now.
She's driving away from her UMass Amherst dorm towards New Hampshire.
She's going to take this right down until she finds 112 East. This is what she was looking for. I wish she had gone straight.
And after traveling over 140 miles...
Maura is not familiar with this area.
Around 7:30 p.m., her car veers off the road.
Maura came around the corner, and so the car wasn't running properly. It impacted right down here. There was a big snowbank here. It's so dark here. If you're looking in this direction, you can't see your hand in front of your face.
This is Maura's second car accident in 3 days. A school bus driver stops to help her.
I just asked her how she was. She said she was shaken up. I couldn't see any blood on her face. And she was shaking like this. I says, okay, I'm going to go call the police.
What the bus driver told us, she didn't appear to be hurt. He offered to call the police for assistance, and she really asked him not to. She said that she had called AAA, but it being in the location of the mountains, he also knew that there was no cell phone coverage there. So he was quite convinced that she hadn't been able to make that call. So he went home, which was a short distance down the road, and called the local police department.
Around 10 minutes later, at 7:45 p.m., police arrive at the accident scene, looking for any trace of the driver.
The police officer at the scene noticed that the windshield was broken in front of where the driver would be seated. The airbags had gone off. There was damage to the front end of the vehicle. When he got there, he found that there was nobody with the vehicle.
In the blink of an eye, this vivacious, athletic young co-ed disappears.
He noticed that there was a box of wine, like a 5-liter box of wine, behind the driver's side seat. You could see that through the window. He noticed in the snow what appeared to be something pink that had been poured into the snow. Subsequently, when they removed the vehicle, he found a Coke bottle, and it smelled like there had been an alcoholic beverage in that bottle.
I spoke with one witness that actually talked to Maura Murray that night at the accident scene. That witness says that Maura appeared a bit shook up, but she did not appear intoxicated.
There didn't appear to be any evidence at the scene which would indicate anything other than she had left the scene under her own power. There wasn't any evidence of a struggle of any kind. The vehicle was locked.
The police officer at the scene of the accident searches the surrounding area. Maura is nowhere to be found.
The initial accident investigation led the police officers to believe that this was simply a case of someone who had been involved in a motor vehicle accident and did not wish to, at least initially that night, have contact with the police.
The next day, police speak on the phone with Maura's family.
As a result of those conversations, they then became concerned that Maura might be depressed. Her father described it, that she was depressed in having crashed his car on Saturday night.
Fred Murray remembers receiving the shocking and mystifying news.
The way I felt was just the world just stopped. Your daughter's missing in an accident in the woods, way up and not in New Hampshire. The police don't seem to know where she is. I couldn't, I wanted to get up here immediately.
The next morning, Maura's boyfriend receives a strange voicemail message.
The message basically, in and of itself, was just a woman breathing and then possibly a whimper or some sort of noise at the end, which we believe to be her.
Get more Disappeared online at investigationdiscovery.com.
I don't know why she came to New Hampshire. I don't know. I'd be guessing the same with everybody else.
It's Wednesday, February 11th, 2004. Fred Murray has just driven all night from his work in Bridgeport, Connecticut, after hearing his daughter's car has been abandoned far away from her dorm room, and she is nowhere to be found.
I get up here at daybreak, to join the search.
Maura's mother, Lori, is living a mother's worst nightmare. She's unable to leave her home in Hanson, Massachusetts to join the search due to a fractured ankle.
Eventually, the rest of my family showed up, and Bill Rausch, Maura's boyfriend, and his mother and father, Bill and Sharon, showed up.
But during his trip from Fort Sill, Oklahoma to New Hampshire, Maura's boyfriend Billy receives a mysterious voice message on his cell phone.
Billy called frantic around 7 a.m. on Wednesday morning. And he says, Mom, he said, while I was going through security, I missed a call. And he said, I'm sure it was Maura.
The message basically, in and of itself, was just a woman breathing and then possibly a whimper or some sort of noise at the end, which we believe to be her.
He said there was some, really soft sobbing and shivering sounds and sniffing. And he said, I don't know what to do. He said, I called it back, and it says it's a prepaid calling card.
They have hope the call is from Maura, since Sharon knows Maura uses prepaid calling cards.
Before Maura had her cell phone, she called Billy with prepaid calling cards. And when Maura was here for Thanksgiving in 2003, I gave her 2 prepaid calling cards. And so that's always, added to our belief that it's very likely that Maura made that very unusual call that Billy received that morning.
Once in New Hampshire, the family frantically searches for Maura.
So we found a place to stay locally, and we started setting up a kind of like a command central and making a lot of calls and trying to get some flyers together.
Well, what we're doing is we're working from the crash site, working out, and it's going to be encompassing about a half a mile radius to start. Again, we're looking for any sign, so had she gone into the woods, she had to have left some sign behind. We got the state police helicopter up there the first thing the next morning to do a search from the air. I also had our bloodhound that's assigned to the troop respond and do a search of the ground.
The state police brought a dog, and the dog was given a glove. It was a brand new glove that Maura had just gotten for Christmas. But if they had asked me, I'd have given them something that she used all the time, like running gear or something like that. But I don't know. Maybe she did wear it, but it was pretty new. The dog followed the scent up to about here, where the dog lost it.
The abrupt loss of the scent, over 100 feet away from the accident scene, leads to speculation that Maura may have gotten into a passing vehicle.
We did an intensive search of the crash scene area for evidence that she may have walked into the woods. Nothing like that was uncovered. Do police make mistakes? Do we miss things? Absolutely. We just want to make sure we're doing everything that we can to locate this missing girl and get her back to her family.
Police question Maura's boyfriend and speak with his parents.
After we arrived in Haverhill on Wednesday, Billy was questioned extensively. They give us a press release.
Maura is described as endangered and possibly suicidal.
Well, in any press release, you want to let the public know, especially if you're looking for help. So you want to give those details so that someone who lives in the area or wherever will just be on the lookout for something out of the ordinary. So that information was included in the early press releases that she might be depressed and she may have come up here to harm herself.
So they proceed to tell us that there's no evidence of foul play. Maura is 21 years old. She is an adult. She has the right and the privilege to go missing of her own choice. We're thinking, oh, this can't be. She's gone. That's our foul play. Our Maura is gone.
While her family and friends are trying not to lose hope,
Maura's loved ones are interviewed by the media. They hope to get the news of her disappearance out to the public in case someone, anyone, can help.
As long as I'm here, I want to use every minute. As long as it's still daylight, I want to be out there.
Driving east all the way to Maine, heading up north close to the Canadian border.
I'm getting more fearful by the hour. I'm scared and I'm desperate.
It's not something we want to dwell on, but we're keeping, we're trying to stay logical and rational. And it just appears that someone more than likely picked her up with bad intentions.
I don't think she's able to contact us. There was no way that she would ever not contact us.
No matter what, they still cling to hope that somewhere out there, Maura may be listening.
Everybody's here looking for you, and just call any one of us. We'll come right down and get you. Don't be afraid, please.
I love you, Maura. I miss you so much, obviously, you know that. And the sooner that I get to see you and be with you again, obviously, the better.
So please, kid, if you're listening to me, we can just bang away at this stuff the same as we do all the time until we fix it.
Meanwhile, police search Maura's car, looking for some trace, some clue as to where she has gone.
Maura's belongings were released to Billy. Billy brought her belongings back to the motel on Friday, February 13th. She had her running clothes. She had a bag with her school books, which include her syllabus. So it shows every intent on doing her schoolwork while she was away. She had every intent on maintaining her, her exercise regimen.
Also found in Maura's car was a book titled Not Without Peril. It was a book chronicling different hikers that had gone into the presidential range of New Hampshire's mountains, and they either never returned or they were badly injured.
Book Not Without Peril was in Maura's car because Maura and I climbed in Mount Washington, and when you read the book, it mentions all these different trails and all the different adventures, some ending happily, some ending in death. People have frozen to death up there. But for the most part, it's uplifting.
Some people speculate, why was Maura reading this particular book? A book about hikers that go into the mountains and never return. But others say this was just one of Maura's favorite books.
With nothing to go on but hope, Maura's family is determined to continue looking for her. During their search, Maura's sister discovers a disturbing potential clue.
Women's underwear was found right down here, more on top of the ice than buried in it. We turned the underwear into the state police, but never heard another word.
There were some items of clothing that were turned into law enforcement. We did forensic testing on those and were able to determine that they were not, in fact, belonging to Maura.
After weeks of constant searching,
I've searched all down through here.
Devastated and exhausted, Maura's loved ones return home.
I personally searched any place that would be significant to her, that would be meaningful, that we went to a lot, that would be special for Maura, but she hadn't been to any of those places.
But witnesses are about to come forward, including one who claims to have seen the young Maura Murray.
The young woman had her arms folded in front of her and seemed to be mouthing the words, "Help me."
In the days and months after that fateful February 9th, 2004, when his daughter disappears from the scene of her one-car accident, Fred Murray hopes for answers, even though there seems to be no leads and no suspects.
Fred, God has just really blessed him and giving him the strength. At his age, he goes up there week after week after week, and he keeps searching the sides of the roads. He keeps searching the woods.
Months after Maura's disappearance, Sharon and Fred decide to do more follow-up, investigating Maura's final cell phone calls themselves.
It wasn't until Fred and I decided in the fall of 2004 that we were going to go back to square one and check some things out that I called these phone numbers.
Hello? I picked up the phone, and it was Sharon. She had said that she obtained Maura's cell phone records, and that I was one of the last people to speak with her, and that she had gone missing.
Linda and her husband own a condo in Bartlett, New Hampshire. And Fred and Maura and Billy had stayed there in late summer of 2003. At the time that I learned this, I went online, and this condo by the Salamonis was the least expensive to rent. So I'm confident that that is why that Maura chose that one.
This 12:55 p.m. call on February 9th, 2004 lasts 3 minutes. Unfortunately, Linda Salamoni is unable to remember more about her conversation with Maura because she is contacted so many months afterwards.
I felt like I might have been able to help at that time. If I had just received a phone call, I could have said, yes, she sounded distressed, or no, she was okay, and this is where she was heading, or whatever, any little bit. So then I felt very frustrated because I still, felt I might have been able to help.
One thing Linda is sure of, she didn't rent a condo to Maura that week.
There was no way for her to get in. We would have to give her the keys. We would make sure that we knew who we were renting it to.
Fred Murray is frustrated with the lack of progress in the case.
Fred has also filed a lawsuit against the state police of New Hampshire and the local police of New Hampshire, trying to obtain the records, the documents pertaining to the Maura Murray case.
My only relief would be the FBI coming in or getting the release of the case records myself. And neither one's going to happen because the state, the court system backs up the state police.
Court decisions have ruled that records relating to the case cannot be released to the public, stating it would interfere with future law enforcement proceedings.
At some point, we may get that piece of evidence which says that she was the victim of a crime, and in solving that case, you want to be able to have everything that you've done from the beginning to that point forward admissible in court if you have to go to trial.
To add to the mystery and the frustration, reporter Maribeth Conway says she spoke to a witness who says she actually encountered Maura Murray, looking very distressed.
She saw a young woman with an older man, a man probably in his 60s. The young woman had her arms folded in front of her and seemed to be mouthing the words, "Help me." The woman finally realized what was happening, but before she really had a chance to do anything about it, the young woman and the man left. The woman did not get license plate numbers or any further of a description of this young girl. She swears that this young woman is Maura Murray.
We've had reported sightings of Maura in Rochester, New Hampshire, in Vermont, in other states. We've always determined that it was not, in fact, Maura.
The interesting thing about the Maura Murray case is that there are so many theories still to this day. Maura was possibly suicidal. She was possibly running away. She could also have been kidnapped.
When the press releases came out about her being suicidal and all the other absurd theories, it was very hard to read. I mean, yeah, people can think what they want, but those that know her know that she was a happy person.
There's no evidence of suicide. You're talking about a kid full of life, with every possible thing to live for. She's getting out of nursing school. She's going to have a great job. She's getting ready to get married. Got a whole future.
You know, when Maura went missing, there were many things that were said. You know, one of the things was that, well, you know, Maura has run off with another boyfriend. And Billy, you know, was confronted with this, and he said, I hope she has. You know, if she is with another young man, then she is safe.
I think we never thought it would go past a few days. We just thought eventually she'd turn up and there'd be answers, and maybe she'd have a great story to tell after the fact. Some adventure happened. Never thought that 4.5 years later, 5 years later, we'd just have more questions than answers. So this is Mara's last email to the group of girls.
Mora's friends feel her last email to them proves she was not planning any sort of long-term getaway.
She writes, Dane Cook is playing at UMass, and we went to get tickets and it was sold out. I missed out again. But I did some research and he plays in Storrs, Connecticut, February 12th, not too from UMass. She points out that it's February 12th, so it would be 3 days after she actually went missing. So to me, it shows that that's not someone who is trying to take off permanently. She wouldn't just make plans and then completely ditch them in our minds.
We don't really know what happened to Mara, and though we learn more and more all the time, we don't seem to be able to solve this mystery.
To date, we haven't been able to come up with that answer, but it's certainly my hope, and I know the investigators working on this case, that we will one day have the answer for the family, because I can't imagine.
An ambitious young woman, loved by the community.
Everyone was friends with Terry.
She was hardworking, had 2 jobs.
By 21, she owned a home.
Has her future ripped away.
This was a particularly brutal attack.
They stabbed her multiple times on that road.
This would have been a horrifying death.
Police discover unwanted admirers prone to violence.
He was covered in blood and had blood in his hair.
And always carrying a knife.
He was jealous and said that it'd kill her.
But the evidence leads nowhere.
The investigation is getting older and older and harder to solve.
I didn't think we were going to get an answer for this case.
Until a surprise breakthrough.
I was beyond excited. I actually shouted, "Oh my God," at my desk.
Points to a killer off the radar.
Right away, I'm like, who's that guy?
Why? Why did someone do this?
People said, oh, no, he wouldn't kill anybody, but he had this pretend life.
He had no criminal record. He did not emerge as a likely suspect at all.
Germantown, Wisconsin, a sleepy village celebrated as one of the best places to live in America.
I grew up in Germantown. It's, a small community. I would ride my bike to the store for my mom. It was not someplace that you were afraid of.
Germantown is a small town near Milwaukee, a lot of farmland, a lot of open spaces, just a lot of dairy farming, some factories, and homes.
But on May 28, 1999, this bedroom community wakes to a horrific crime.
Yeah, I have a dead body up here on River Lane. There's a green car there, green Pontiac car. She's laying on the curb. There's blood on the road.
I got a phone call that there was a suspected homicide in the industrial park. I immediately went to the crime scene. I saw a vehicle on the side of the road facing west, a large amount of blood in the roadway. I observed what appeared to be footwear impressions in blood. I saw what appeared to be drag marks of blood, 2 large pools of blood, and alongside the vehicle was a female lying face down. When we rolled her over, she had a significant number of what appeared to be stab wounds on her front. She had stab wounds on both sides of her neck.
She had some blood on her hands, and we're always hoping that there's a fight so she can either scratch the attacker. So the hands were swabbed for DNA.
We proceeded with the perspective she may have not been expecting it, and things went south very, very fast. I do believe there was rage in this case.
That usually is indicative of personal, that they know each other, and it's almost to the point of overkill.
Who was this woman who had been so savagely murdered? Investigators looked to the victim's car for answers.
The vehicle itself appeared to be parked in a reasonable manner alongside the road.
Her car keys were by her body, so she probably had them when she got out of her car and then dropped them in the fight.
The keys indicated that she willingly got out of the vehicle and talked to someone, and then the homicide occurred. The stabbing continued not only in the roadway, but on the grass at 2 different locations, and then it looked like it may have occurred alongside the vehicle.
There's blood spatter and cast off on her wheel, on her hood, on her fender, and up on her windshield.
Her purse was in the vehicle. There was $200 in her purse.
This was not a robbery. This was something else.
After finding a driver's license, police determine the victim is 22-year-old Teresa Wesolowski.
Out on the road, there was tire acceleration marks leading away from the pool of blood in the roadway, as if you put your foot on the accelerator and peeled out, confirming to us that there was another vehicle in front of her where she was more than likely stabbed.
Police comb the crime scene, but no murder weapon is found. As detectives try to make sense of what happened to Teresa, her lifelong best friend Michelle gets a call.
Terry's brother called, and it was early. Not that it was out of the ordinary, because we were all so close. And so I answered, and he's like, Michelle, Terry never came home last night. Well, I'm gonna start calling police departments. And Germantown said, we have her name on file. You'll have to come and speak to a detective.
Michelle and Teresa's brother rushed to the station. They had last seen Teresa the day before when she left for work.
I'll never forget, the officer was in front of me. And I said, where is she? And he said, I'm sorry, she's gone. And I just remember screaming, someone just told me my friend is gone. What does gone mean?
Born in Germantown, Wisconsin, Teresa Wesolowski grew up an outgoing girl with a magnetic personality.
Everyone was friends with Terry. We became best friends in 6th grade, and then from that moment on, we were inseparable. We were sisters. There were not many people that called her Teresa. She was always Terry. I think the only time that I remember her being called Teresa was when her mom was mad. When we had done something wrong. It was always just her and I on the playground. I mean, we were just always, I want to say, running the neighborhood, you know? I can't remember a weekend that I wasn't at her house.
As she got older, Teresa was fiercely independent, buying a car at 16 and moving out on her own at 18.
She was working at Cousins Subs in Mequon, and she would go there at 7 a.m. and she would get done by 1, and she would head over to Stone Container, and she would work till 11 o'clock at night.
Despite a heavy work schedule, Teresa loved to be social.
Oh, Terry was fun. You know, Terry liked attention, and she definitely liked the attention from men. Men just seemed more attracted to her. She was young, she was beautiful. Any guy would have wanted that.
How, then, did someone so driven and well-liked meet such a horrible fate?
Young female, you know, at the beginning of her life, getting things together, and it's ended.
Back at the station, investigators reach out to Teresa's family and friends to piece together the hours leading up to her death.
Her shift ended at 11, and the last that anybody saw of her that we know of was that she got into her vehicle and left that parking lot.
During the interviews, detectives get their first tip.
That morning, the officers received a contact from somebody at the Department of Public Works. They had a channel on the same radio system that the police department was on, so they would know that the homicide occurred. They indicated that somebody driving a truck pulled into the parking lot. An individual got out, and they said that he was covered in blood and had blood in his hair.
Is this man somehow connected to the crime scene? Detectives head over to interview the witnesses, who tell police they'd never seen the man before.
We were told the truck driver asked if there was a hospital nearby, and then he indicated now he'd just clean up in the bathroom, which he did, and then left.
It's very common that the person who's doing the attacking gets stabbed too or cuts himself, especially if there's a struggle. Now we had a suspect, a viable suspect, and now we needed to find that person to figure out what happened.
Coming up, detectives uncover suspects with violent tendencies.
He said he can cut people like paper. He could become abusive and violent.
And untangle a web of deception.
Well, he was never married. He didn't have any kids.
He said, I don't want to be a snitch.
Leading them to a suspect they never imagined.
We really felt that we had turned the corner on this case.
It was almost surreal. It got me because it wasn't anyone I knew.
Hours after finding Teresa Wesolowski stabbed to death at the side of the road, police search for a man seen covered in blood at a nearby public works building.
We had a very good police artist. He did a sketch of the individual based on the statements from the witnesses, put the word out there into the community.
While police wait for leads on the bloody man, they shift their attention to Teresa's home to look for clues.
I went down to Teresa's house. We made a search of the residence. I checked the shoes in the residence against the footwear impression at the crime scene, and none of them matched. So the footwear impression at the scene weren't Teresa's.
Investigators talked to Teresa's family and friends, hoping to learn more about her. They learned she was dating someone named Charlie.
Charlie was a young man who didn't hold down a lot of jobs very well. He was staying at his parents' house. They had been dating for a few months prior to her homicide.
We had known Charlie since grade school. We grew up with Charlie. He was 3 years older than us.
We had some people that we interviewed that said they fought a lot or she wanted to break up with him.
I didn't think Charlie was good for anyone. In Terry's mind, he was temporary.
A couple of weeks before her homicide, we found out that he borrowed her car while she was at work and failed to pick her up. She walked to the tavern, and then they got in a bit of an argument, and she finally said enough is enough.
Friends worried how Charlie might react to Teresa moving on.
Some of the people indicated that Teresa told them this boyfriend was jealous and said that if he caught her going out with somebody else, he'd kill her.
He said, give me 2 weeks and you won't have your friend anymore. You're like, what do you mean I won't have my friend?
So that it raises a flag that we have to determine if it got worse after that or was it just a one evening spat.
You know, stabbing is very personal. That usually is indicative that they know each other.
Why did someone do this? What did she do that was so bad that someone had to stab her repeatedly in this crime of passion?
Police immediately bring Charlie in for questioning.
Charlie was very nervous and seemed to act like he didn't really want to be there.
When police asked Charlie where he was the night of the murder, he says he was home.
He lived in the basement of his parents' house, and he was alibied by his mother. I remember the mother claiming there's no way he could get out of this house without me hearing it.
However, he slept in the basement, which the patio door opens up from the basement outside, so he could leave the house without his parents knowing. At times, Teresa got off of work at 11 at night, and she's found in the morning at 5 or 6 o'clock. So his alibi has weaknesses. It's not airtight.
Could Charlie have snuck out, driven to see Teresa, and murdered her?
Did Charlie have access to a car? He borrowed cars from people a lot. So could he have had a car that night? Yeah, he could have. The homicide's probably less than 5 miles from his house.
Police looked to the tire track evidence.
The tire tracks at the scene were measured and documented. I made contact with the Michigan State Police, who have a database of vehicles. They came back with a list of vehicles based on manufacturer specifications that could have created that. And it's quite a large list.
While detectives continue to investigate Charlie, They also turned to the box factory where Teresa worked.
Whenever you have a homicide like this and it's right down the road from where she worked, obviously your biggest pool of suspects has to be the guys she worked with. There was a fair number of men that were interested in her, and there were some that, had dated her. There were some that wanted to date her.
It wasn't like she was going out and dating them. She just liked hanging out with them.
So we went to the factory to determine who had contact with Teresa, and is there anything that stands out and points to any particular individual as possibly having done this.
We interviewed one of her co-workers named Mark Lebecki. Mark Lebecki worked the same shift as Teresa.
Mark was known as a soft-spoken but well-liked guy at the factory.
He's a very quiet individual, very reserved. Most people would describe him as very mellow.
Working just a few machines away from each other, Mark and Teresa had become close.
He talked to her at work. He was a nice, likable person.
And it got to the point where they developed kind of a friendship.
Unlike the men at the factory who wanted to date Teresa, Mark preferred sharing stories about his family.
Mark Lebecki told Teresa that he had a couple kids and he kept photos of them in his wallet. He would show them to Teresa, saying, "These are my kids."
He talked to her enough to create a relationship that she felt the need to go and talk to him when he needed a friend.
Mark tells police he is saddened by Teresa's death. He also remembers something was off with her the night she died.
He indicated that he saw her that night of the homicide and commented that it looked like she was having a bad day, and she said, yeah, something was jamming in her machine.
She just laughed it off and moved on.
Having no reason to question Mark further, police turned to coworkers with a less amicable relationship with Teresa.
There were some statements from individuals that they observed her having an argument with somebody by the vehicle before the night of the homicide.
The man Teresa was arguing with is identified as her coworker, Isaac Alvarez. When police dig into his background, they find some troubling details.
Isaac Alvarez was just a little bit weird, and he always carried a knife.
At one point, he was upset with a coworker, and he said, "I'm going to cut that cracker, or I'm going to knife that bitch." He told somebody else that, he can cut people like paper.
His comments about cutting up a supervisor, those are the comments that we heard, and those are the comments that kept our interest in him.
To find out more, police look into Isaac's personal life.
His ex-wife indicated that he did have a knife he always kept on his belt, and she indicated that he could become abusive and violent after one drink.
Police bring in Isaac to shed light on his relationship with Teresa and why they were arguing at work.
And in talking to him about Teresa, you could see the emotion coming out of him. This was very stressful for him. That's also the type of stressor that might cause somebody to commit a homicide.
Then, Isaac reveals something else.
He did ask Teresa if she wanted to meet him for a drink, and Teresa, being who Teresa was, she didn't say, "No way." She said, "Well, we'll see." He shows up and she's not there. Is that rejection?
Had Teresa's rejection sent Isaac into a murderous rage?
We asked Isaac to take a polygraph. Because of Isaac's strange behaviors, outbursts, maybe prone to violence, and always carrying a knife, and he was seen in the parking lot area that night, he was on our main suspect list.
While investigating the stabbing death of Teresa Wesolowski, police focus on her coworkers.
She's working in a factory populated by mostly men. That sets up a scenario where you're going to have people trying to ask her out. She was outgoing and she was friendly, so people could perceive that as being led on, where in fact she was probably just being nice.
She always tried to let him down easy. She would always be like, "Well, I don't want to hurt his feelings." She just wanted to make sure that they still wanted to be her friend.
At the police station, investigators interview one of those workers, Isaac Alvarez. Witnesses saw Isaac argue with Teresa before the night of her death.
Isaac's alibi, when he was interviewed, he was home. He lives with a 50-plus-year-old lady. His story was he went to bed at 9 o'clock, and he may have had a conversation with her when she came home, but he doesn't recall. She says she had a conversation with him 11:15, 11:30 at night, and she thought it was around 1 o'clock when he went to bed. It's a little different than his story. Well, in his case, is that person willing to lie for you? We don't know. So that's not an airtight alibi.
Police convince Isaac to take a polygraph.
He was somewhat deceptive and not answering the questions in the proper manner. And so we believe that he was trying to skew the results of the polygraph.
You couldn't get a good answer from him.
So because of that, it was ruled inconclusive.
Without any hard evidence, police can't charge Isaac for the crime. While detectives look for more leads, Teresa's autopsy report arrives.
Based on the injury patterns, the attack was a surprise attack because we did not see a significant amount of defensive type injuries. And then she was pinned in a prone or face down position. I individually identified and labeled 47 separate stab wounds. This would have been a horrifying death for any individual.
As police review evidence, they follow up on the lead on the bloody man from the Department of Public Works.
They had a sketch made of this unknown person that stopped at the garage to wash up.
We put it out there. The individual didn't come forward. It was out in the press. It was in the newspaper. I did go back and re-interview the witnesses, but nothing came back of evidentiary value.
Police also continue interviewing Teresa's friends.
I always protected Terry. So when she was killed, I had no purpose anymore. And so I gave my all to whatever they needed. It was hours and hours and hours of interviews with the police, trying to give them everything that I knew about every person we had ever hung out with, for me to help them to hopefully find who did this.
One of the people detectives learn about is Jerry Kirkpatrick.
So Jerry Kirkpatrick was a delivery guy to Cousins, where Teresa worked.
Friends say Jerry asked Teresa out numerous times.
I don't think she was looking to have a relationship with him. He was definitely interested in her.
That's the indication that we got, that he was pursuing her more than she was pursuing him.
Police learn about one encounter with Jerry that left Teresa unsettled.
I thought I saw Jerry before she died at the club, just watching us. And it gave me this feeling like, why is he here? Like, he shouldn't know we're here. Why is he standing off in the shadows? It was a very creepy feeling.
So the question is Jerry stalking her?
But then, Teresa's friends point out something else disturbing about Jerry.
They thought he might be similar to the picture of the person that was at the Department of Public Works. The drawing looked like him.
Officers immediately interview Jerry at his home. Jerry denies he is the man in the sketch. He claims he was at a bar with his stepbrother the night of Teresa's murder, then went home before midnight.
There was alibi information that was confirming of the statement. When he got home, he called for a pizza to be delivered, and that was confirmed subsequently with phone records. He let us look at his vehicle. We examined the interior or exterior. Nothing of evidentiary value was located in that examination.
Then, investigators make a startling discovery.
There were knives found at Jerry Kirkpatrick's residence.
A lot of times we'd ask people, do you have knives? And can we see those knives? Do you mind if we have them tested? A lot of times that's done for a reaction. So he presents 4 or 5 knives. He did let us look at them when we were at the house. We even submitted them to the crime lab to have it analyzed.
While investigators wait for results, Jerry's landlord delivers some alarming news.
What happens within the next few days is he talks to his landlord about breaking his lease.
Jerry Kirkpatrick decided to move out of town, and that's in the midst of being interviewed and the investigation. So right away, that raises our suspicion.
Was Jerry trying to give detectives the slip?
It is clearly a red flag, and we have to look at that behavior as being possibly flight behavior. So we want to find out why.
While investigating Jerry Kirkpatrick for the brutal stabbing of 22-year-old Teresa Wesolowski, detectives learn from Jerry's landlord he's about to skip town.
The landlord knew the police were talking to Jerry. We were actually notified by the Milwaukee Police Department because the landlord had thought, hey, this is odd, and called them. He says he's going to move to Tennessee. One of the aspects you look at in a homicide, is there any flight behavior after the homicide? Well, breaking your lease and moving to Tennessee might be described as flight behavior. We did confirm that he put money on a place on that Friday after the homicide.
But when investigators get the lab results back on Jerry's knives, the case takes a frustrating turn.
Nothing came back of evidentiary value.
Somebody having a collection of knives is not that uncommon, especially in Wisconsin. And the quick move that he made is something strange, but, you know, there's nothing we can do about it. If he wants to move, he can move.
Police have one more lead to follow. Jerry's resemblance to the bloody man at the Public Works building.
He fit that description. We actually did an in-person lineup with Jerry, and he was not picked out by the individuals that observed this person driving the truck.
That person was never identified and never located.
Without any hard evidence linking Jerry to the murder, police have to let him go. Weeks go by, and investigators worry the case will grow cold.
We're doing interviews. Some people we're re-interviewing, but as time moves on, the investigation is getting older and older and harder to solve.
As the weeks turn into months, investigators doggedly work the case.
Well, I technically could have retired about 5 years before I did. A lot of it is to bring justice for the victim, but also to bring some sort of resolution or closure for the family.
The police kept telling me that it was someone close to her because of the horrific nature of it. I alienated myself from people because I just didn't know who I could or couldn't trust.
Months turn into years, but Teresa's loved ones make sure she's not forgotten.
Once a year on the date of the murder, the families would come out and hold vigils. It was a way for the family to try to say that we're still fighting to resolve this case.
But we use it as a way of seeing who is showing up and maybe more importantly, who isn't showing up.
Nothing seems out of the ordinary until 2005, 6 years after the murder, when Teresa's family notices something unusual.
Her mom had called me and said, "Did you happen to go out and leave flowers for Terry?" And I said, "No, I didn't."
These arrangements showed up, and they checked around and didn't know who put them there. So that always leads you to believe, is there somebody out there that's feeling guilty about committing a homicide and leaving something on a gravesite?
We had a camera installed to see if maybe we could identify the next time somebody did something like that. But we didn't capture any image or anything.
For detectives, it's another dead end. But then, with the investigation on the brink of going cold, a new forensic technology turns this 6-year-old case red hot.
In 2005, I got a contact from the Wisconsin Crime Lab, and Patty said, "Hey, I want you to submit this list of items for us to analyze using a technique called YSTR DNA testing."
With YSTR DNA testing, it allows us to find a very small amount of Y chromosome male DNA and a very large amount of DNA from a female source. So it's like finding that single grain of salt in a large bag of sugar.
Early on, when we had the blood evidence on Teresa's hands tested, it all came back as her DNA. That's a problem because it's not giving us a lead. what happens if we strip away all the X chromosomes? If she's a female and that's all her blood, there should be nothing left.
The analyst retests the swabs of Teresa's hands for male DNA.
The first thing I did was look at the previously run DNA samples to see if there was any Y chromosome DNA present in those. All of a sudden, all the DNA types I developed on her hands are matching a known standard for male DNA, and it was incredible. I contacted Detective Yogers for samples of DNA from individuals known to be connected to the case.
And now we're going to go take DNA samples from all of our suspects. We took what was probably our 25 top suspects, nearest and dearest, ex-boyfriend, boyfriend, that type of thing. That first group was a 0.
Undeterred, investigators submit more samples.
We went back to the list and got a second group.
We were testing people that were ancillary people. We had DNA from officers at the crime scene that we used to eliminate.
I didn't think we were going to get an answer for this case.
Then, after over 40 samples, a breakthrough.
The testing came back and only one person matched the Y chromosome found mixed into the blood on Teresa's hand.
Detective Yogers called me and said, "You're not going to believe this. The last guy that I swabbed is the guy that has a positive match on that DNA."
After 7 years investigating the murder of Teresa Wesolowski, detectives have now matched DNA from the scene to one of their suspects.
I was beyond excited. I actually shouted, "Oh my God," at my desk. We had a match from the DNA on Teresa's hands to Mark Lebecki.
Right away, I'm like, who's that guy?
Mark Lebecki is a co-worker of Teresa's. Mark Lebecki was one of the individuals that was interviewed by the officers. His statement was that he and Teresa were friendly at the factory.
So the murder occurs, and Mark Lebecki kept working there and was still working there.
Before they approach Mark, detectives need more than just the DNA evidence.
Now, the other heavy lifting starts because even the DNA evidence isn't going to stand on its own. So we need to bring all these other factors into play in building a case that's sufficient for the DA to charge.
First, detectives go back to the factory to dig deeper into Mark's background.
Some people said, "Oh, no, Mark Lebecki, he wouldn't kill anybody. He's just a puppy." He would show people pictures of little girls, and he said they were his daughters. "What do you think I should get them for Christmas or birthday, whatever?"
When detectives look closer, they discover Mark isn't all he claims to be.
Well, he was never married. He didn't have any kids. So this is just like weird. He had this like pretend life.
Mark Lebecki was pretty much a loner, lived with his parents in a mobile home in a rural area, apparently liked to watch television, play video games.
I think it was just a big fantasy with him, a big game to try to fit in.
What else had Mark been hiding?
We had one person that said that Mark had asked her what she thought he could do to better his chances with going out with Teresa. So he clearly had a focus on her.
Detectives revisit evidence from the crime scene, starting with the bloody boot prints.
The problem with identifying somebody with a common shoe is there's so many of them. There could be millions of those shoes made. I contact a person in Scottsdale, Arizona, the detective in their forensic unit, and he had the foremost outsold databases that existed. And he said, that is a Texas steer outsole. Early in the investigation, we had information about the employees being supplied shoes or they could purchase shoes from a store.
When police search factory records, they make a crucial discovery.
And we determined that Mark Lebecki had submitted a receipt for a Texas steer shoe.
Next, investigators turned to the tire tracks left at the scene.
So we took 56 people out of our investigation and identified the vehicles that were registered to them at the time of the homicide. 5 individuals had vehicles that were able to make that mark at the scene. One of them was Mark Levicki.
With the evidence piling up, detectives asked Mark to come down to the police department for an interview.
He was quiet. He answered the questions. He was confident, I would say.
That confidence doesn't last long.
When he finds out that his DNA is on her hands, he then starts to try and explain why they are there. What started out as I just talked to her at the door is I didn't talk to her then, I talked to her at a break, and we may have hugged.
Detectives confront Mark with the evidence.
I told him the car wheel track matches. Your DNA is found on her hands, and a boot that you wear is in the blood footwear impression on the road. So, we're looking at you. You need to start explaining some of this stuff.
Now, it's Mark's turn to drop a bombshell on police.
He said, I don't want to get anyone else in trouble. I don't want to be a snitch. Then he mentioned this guy named Tom Thompson.
Tom Thompson worked at the factory with Mark and Teresa.
At the time of the homicide, the officers that went up and did the canvass at the factory did speak with Tom Thompson. His statement to them was that he knew Teresa. He wasn't necessarily friends with Teresa. They never dated, anything like that.
Mark tells them what happened the night of the murder.
Mark said he stopped on the side of the road to buy some cocaine from Thompson.
He said that when he got up there was a vehicle already parked in front where he parked, and Tom Thompson walked up to his vehicle.
So Thompson goes in, sits in the back seat. Mark said, I am doing the cocaine in the front of the seat.
According to him, Teresa gets in the back seat and gets in an argument with Tom, and he proceeds to stab her. Mark says he only hears thumping and movement in the back seat.
Now it's time to start poking holes in this story. She cannot be stabbed 40-some times in the back seat of someone's car and they not know what's going on. The whole interior would have been covered in blood. So that's out right there.
Mark says Teresa flops out of there onto the ground. Tom Thompson continues to stab her and drags her to that location alongside the vehicle.
According to Mark, Thompson then turned on him.
Tom Thompson tell him, you keep your mouth shut, and then he let him go. So he kept his mouth shut. He didn't go to the police.
4 years later, Tom Thompson dies, but Mark keeps silent for another 3 years.
He's trying to explain how he's involved in this homicide, and the easiest thing to do is to blame it on the dead guy.
Detectives re-interview workers at the factory about Tom Thompson.
Everybody to a person said he was a health nut.
We have found no indication that he was dealing cocaine or using cocaine.
Investigators asked Teresa's friends if she used drugs.
Terry wanted nothing to do with cocaine. Nothing.
So she wouldn't have gone there to buy drugs from Tom Thompson. What was her reason for being there?
There's one last piece of evidence to examine. The car that Mark drove at the time of the murder.
We wanted that vehicle. We found it by another owner, and we ended up buying it from that guy. We brought it down to the lab and examined it for blood, hair, whatever evidence that we could. That rear seat was taken apart. It was a perforated leather, so there were holes in it. So the blood went down through the holes in that leather, and then they soaked into the foam rubber of that seat.
Does the blood belong to Teresa? It's sent to the lab for analysis.
I was very excited to call Mike Yogers and let him know I had found a possible match.
10 years after 22-year-old Teresa Wesolowski is stabbed to death, detectives are waiting to see if blood found in the back of coworker Mark Lebecki's car belongs to her.
Those DNA profiles matched the DNA profile from Teresa Wesolowski.
Oh, it was significant. It was an important moment.
But what about Mark's claim that coworker Tom Thompson killed Teresa?
At this stage, and 7 years after the murder, Lebecki is implicating a man who had died 3 years earlier, but it was only Lebecki's DNA that was ever found on Teresa's body. They find blood in a cushion of a seat in Lebecki's car. They find that that's Teresa's DNA. They have his DNA, her DNA, and at that point, the case was made.
That was the final thing that District Attorney needed to issue the charge. We really felt that we had turned the corner on this case.
Detective Yogers called me and he said, I just want to let you know that we are going to make an arrest. And I was so excited. I was waiting, just waiting for the news.
Detectives go to the box factory where Mark works.
We watched for him to come out of the building, and Kim and I walked up to him and told him he was under arrest. I was excited. It was a good day.
Mark denies killing Teresa, so investigators are left to piece together what really happened that night.
I think Mark Lebicki was a very lonely person that probably imagined a relationship with Teresa and decided she was the one. She was just being nice to people. And he probably read that for more than it was.
I think for Terry, it was more that this guy was telling him his problems at work, and she was a listener. She would listen. He wore on her heartstrings and her niceness as a person.
Then, on May 28th, 1999, Mark made his move.
I think that she was coming out of the building, and Mark, for whatever reason, convinced her to meet him. They meet at the back of the vehicle.
I think that he probably did ask her to come back to his place for the night. And when she said no, he just went on a rampage and just started stabbing her. He stabbed her multiple times on that road. Then he dragged her over to that grass. He stabbed her some more. There's blood flying up on her car. He was a monster that night.
We can only guess at it because he's not talking. We don't have to prove why he did this. We just have to prove that he did.
After the vicious stabbing, Mark returned to his normal routine.
Mark Lebecki continues to work at the factory. He doesn't make any erratic move like moving away or changing jobs. He just sort of carries on with life as he did before the murder. He had no criminal record. Mark Lebecki certainly did not emerge as a likely suspect at all. It was shocking to hear that Mark Lebecki had killed Teresa.
It was almost surreal. It got me because it wasn't anyone I knew.
At trial, Mark Lebecki enters a plea of not guilty and sticks to his story that Tom Thompson killed Teresa.
Clearly, his incentive was to try and show somebody else did it back there. But that doesn't hold up.
I don't think the jury bought that at all.
Mark is convicted of first-degree murder, and in November 2010, he is sentenced to 30 years in prison with no chance of parole.
Mark Lebecki did not admit guilt. The judge noted that Lebecki never expressed any remorse.
In his mind, he's still not guilty. And the judge even said to him, I hope that someday you will admit to yourself that you've done this, because you have done this.
The journey was long and tedious. It will never replace Teresa for the family. She was a good kid. She was moving forward with her life. She probably would have maybe had grandkids.
This case was one of a kind. Not only the nature of it, but the brutal nature of it.
When I found out, it just floored me. Why could that happen?
This is an old lady who's been murdered and seriously sexually assaulted in her home.
How could somebody that I'd grown up with be capable of doing something like that?
A lot of people were generally scared.
This just doesn't look right.
There was no sign of forced entry, so it was obvious that it was somebody that she knew.
Hey! Open the door!
Right, at this moment in time, I'm arresting a suspicion of murder.
7 miles south of Leicester, in the heart of the English countryside, lies the quaint village of Fleckney.
Fleckney is a quiet village. It's very close now. It's like it has its own little bubble. People are very, very close. Everybody knows everybody. Most people are related in Fleckney.
Beautiful rural settings, friendly people, local community is fantastic. But yeah, lovely, lovely place to live and grow up in.
It's not the sort of place where a lot of crime happens. I've been to Fleckney a few times that had nothing to do with crime. I'd been there to judge a talent contest. I think it was called Fleckney's Got Talent.
The people who live in Fleckney are generally well-to-do. It's quite a low-crime area. There are retiring people there. There's some retirement bungalows around there. There's not a lot of throughfare. The people who are in Fleckney are generally the people who live there, rather than the people who visit there.
And it was this perfect, idyllic village that 72-year-old Jane Hings chose to retire to.
Jane was an only child, and her mum and dad suddenly passed away years before, which left her on her own with no immediate family around. Jane was quite a private person. She didn't like everyone to know, her business, and kept herself to herself, really. But once you got to know her, she opened up more, and it was just fun. She had quirky ways about her, but she was kind and she was caring.
Everybody in Fleckney knew Jane. She relied on people to give her a lift to the hairdressers, to the shops, things like that. She was inoffensive in every way. People didn't have bad things to say about her. And in her life beforehand, she worked hard.
Jane took pride in her appearance. She'd always, regular to having her hair done every few weeks, and she'd always sort of make sure she was nicely dressed and put on a bit of makeup, so she'd still try and make the effort to look nice.
Having worked overseas as a nanny, Jane had settled into retirement, whilst also taking care of her much-loved rescue dog, Paddy.
He was spoilt rotten. Everything she did was for Paddy. You'd go in, there'd be dog treats stacked up to the ceiling. We'd lie on a bed at night and could look with her.
Whilst Jane used friends and neighbours to help walk Paddy, in the summer of 2017, an accident meant she needed a lot more care.
Jane had a fall and was admitted to hospital for about 3 or 4 weeks.
She'd suffered some injuries when her dog Paddy had pulled her over, and then when she came out of hospital, that's when she needed the carers and she needed help in getting around, and she couldn't go very far.
But the community came together for Jane, and she slowly got back on her feet.
She was the sort of person that people warmed to, they liked her, and they were happy to help out.
Then, just a few weeks after leaving hospital, tragedy strikes.
On the Sunday morning, Jane's carers went in as they were meant to, about 7 o'clock in the morning. Jane's front door was unlocked, which is normal. They went in. She was laid in bed. The cover was pulled up over her head and both of her arms were raised above her head. When they peeled back the duvet, which had covered her head entirely, they saw that she had died.
The carers are puzzled that Jane's body is covered completely by the duvet and call for an ambulance. Then, they notice something else unusual. Items are out of place in Jane's usually meticulous house.
And when the ambulance arrived, they could see that she'd been dead for some time. And the paramedic who was there, he looked around and could see that there'd been an untidy search. Some drawers were open, some things were knocked over.
Items were strewn across the floor, drawers were open.
Here is a lady who's died with the cover over her head, with the arms raised above the head, and it looks like there's been a burglary that's taken place.
With police at the scene, suspicions grow that this is not a natural death, and the house is immediately cordoned off. But with no obvious injuries, how Jane died is still a mystery. which means detectives begin to theorise what could have happened to the pensioner.
Is it a burglary that's gone wrong? Is it Jane who's suffered a heart attack following a burglary, or whether she has passed away and then a burglary has happened afterwards, or whether this is somebody who has murdered Jane and then burgled the bungalow afterwards?
The first step for detectives is to establish how Jane died.
I received a phone call from the duty detective inspector who said they had a death. They weren't 100% happy with it, and they would value my opinion on what was going on.
Dr. Hamilton attends the scene, and as well as the unusual way Jane has been tucked into her bed, his suspicions are raised further.
And the most immediately concerning thing was that her nightdress appeared to be pulled up, and that seemed very unusual for somebody who simply died in their sleep. This just doesn't look right, it doesn't look normal.
As suspicions are raised that she could have been the victim of a sexual attack, Jane is taken for post-mortem. But almost immediately, everything changes.
This is HFM. Police have launched a murder inquiry after an elderly woman was found dead at her home in Fleckney. The body was discovered in a bungalow on Elizabeth Road. It's thought the victim died at some point during Saturday evening or in the early hours of Sunday.
Whilst transporting Jane, a shocking piece of evidence has been found.
As we took the body, a tongue bar fell from one of the creases in the skin. Miss Hings didn't have a tongue piercing, so we have evidence of somebody else very close to her body. That ultimately became one of the most important pieces of evidence in catching the killer.
On a quiet Sunday morning in the village of Fleckney in Leicestershire, residents are waking up to disturbing news of a possible murder on their doorstep.
This is HFM. Further tests are being carried out to try to determine what killed an elderly woman in her own home in Fleckney. It prompted police to launch a murder inquiry following the discovery of her body in the property on Elizabeth Road. There were signs of a disturbance in her bungalow, which has led officers to believe she may have been the victim of a burglary.
72-year-old Jane Hings has been found dead by her carers early on a Sunday morning. Her house has been burgled, and there's signs she has been sexually assaulted. Police are treating her death as suspicious and have cordoned off the scene.
There was police tape from the tree round to the lamppost. You couldn't get to where, if you can just see that red car behind this thing, that was all blocked off as well, because that's the back of her house. It's not something we expected to ever happen in Fleckney. It's such a quiet village, a nice village. I was gobsmacked. There's something could happen like this, you know what I mean? On my doorstep, literally on my doorstep. And for people that I know.
It's a place where you can leave your doors and windows open. Everybody knows everybody. But, you know, this sent shockwaves through the community. And I think that a lot of people would have felt generally scared.
With the village inundated with police vehicles, Jane's loved ones are also confronted with the news of her death.
I'd arranged to go over to Jane's on the Sunday morning to take Paddy for a walk. And as usual, I was running late and I'd had no phone call, which was really strange. And then I pulled into the place where she lived and just saw loads of police cars, police vans, forensics, and yeah, that's when I found out. So I last spoke to Jane the night before. I was supposed to go and see her that day. I'd been on holiday, so I hadn't seen her for a couple of weeks. And we were on the phone for about an hour. I miss Jane. There's so much she could have talked about her life, and I didn't get to hear any of it. And my phone is so deadly quiet all the time.
Whilst moving Jane's body, pathologists have discovered a tongue bar in her groin.
The investigation then shifted from, is this a burglary that's gone wrong, to this is an old lady who's been murdered and seriously sexually assaulted in her home.
That tongue bar was put into an evidence bag immediately. Everyone knew that this was potentially important. That went straight off. It was fast-tracked through the DNA lab.
As detectives wait for the DNA results, upmost on their mind is that this might not be an isolated incident.
One of our first lines of inquiry is to research cases of a similar nature, and we conducted a number of checks looking at anybody who was already convicted and in prison who could have been on day release for the same offence. But then this case was one of a kind. Not only the nature of it, but the brutal nature of it.
Immediately, door-to-door inquiries begin.
When officers initially attended the scene, they tried to identify people who would know Jane the last time that she was seen or spoken to.
Officers investigate whether Jane had any enemies in the village.
When we looked at Jane's past, there was no fallouts with anybody. There was nothing to indicate somebody with a vendetta, somebody with a grudge, any past history with anybody which would tell us this person has a long-running grudge against Jane and would want ill of her.
But locals have their own suspicions.
When the police first came, they said there was no sign of forced entry or anything like that, so it was obvious that it was somebody that she knew.
And it appears that whoever stole from Jane took some of her most precious items. Her wedding ring and a necklace are missing, along with her mobile phone, handbag, and £200. But police find an item they suspect doesn't belong to her.
Behind that bed, between the headboard and the wall, was a baseball cap found on the floor.
It was the designer cap, something that didn't belong to Jane.
The question police want to know is, whose hat is it? And did its owner have anything to do with Jane's death? With the post-mortem results in, it's apparent Jane has suffered a brutal attack.
Really tellingly, she had lacerations, she had tears, both to her anus and to her vagina. The external injuries were really focused around the mouth and the nose and the upper neck area. Miss Hings didn't have that many injuries on her body, but what there was told a story. There was a little linear graze, a scratch on her neck, and we know that her necklace was missing. It would certainly fit with somebody having pulled that necklace and it scraping across the skin. The most important thing that the post-mortem brought out in itself was that there was no natural cause for her to die. No natural cause for Miss Hings to be dead. In addition, there was some quite disturbing bruising around her jawline, around her mouth. Something that really makes you think we have to be sure this woman hasn't been strangled or smothered.
Less than 24 hours after Jane was discovered, the fast turnaround DNA profile from the tongue bar is returned from the lab.
That profile was put into the DNA database and they soon had a match. They had a hit, and that match was Craig Kehoe.
26-year-old Craig Kehoe's DNA was on file, as he was known to the local police as a petty criminal. Now, he was part of a major manhunt.
Craig Kehoe was a local lad. He grew up in the area. He still lived in the area. Craig led a transient lifestyle. He doesn't have a car. He didn't have a phone. He didn't have a job. He didn't claim benefits. So trying to work out where he lived in the Fleckney area meant we had to do a lot of inquiries at a fast pace, but in a discreet way as well.
Police managed to trace Craig to a caravan which was on the outskirts of Fleckney, but not very far from where Jane lived.
Once we'd identified that he was living in a caravan, We sent officers there.
Someone important! Please! Open the door! Please open the door! Someone with a dark hair in there.
And there was a slight standoff of about 30 seconds where the caravan was surrounded and Craig took some time coming to the door before he was arrested.
Right, come behind back.
Right, at this moment in time, I'm arresting you on suspicion of murder. The rest necessary for front effective investigation. You do not have to say anything. How today's do not mention one question, something which later will learn in the court, until you do so name given evidence. Do you understand everything I've said to you?
Craig is taken into custody as detectives try to build a picture of the young man they suspect murdered Jane.
He didn't live far from Jane. He was a former factory worker. He'd been in trouble for burglary, a few break-ins and stealing from his parents and from a friend. But he wasn't known as a major criminal. He wasn't known for anything as horrific as this.
As Craig's DNA was identified on the tongue bar and in her bungalow, detectives want to know how it got there. Craig is interviewed under caution.
When was the last time you saw her then?
The last time I saw her was Sunday night.
Okay. What time would that have been?
I got there for about 10:30.
You got there at 10:30?
Yeah.
That's PM?
About 10 at night.
At night? Okay. So if we take from 10:30 at night then, through to when you left at 11,
Yeah.
tell me exactly in detail what happened.
Well, I was watching a little film on the TV, and then she asked me to have sex with her again.
Just tell me exactly what she said to you about having sex.
She just said, Craig, we have sex with me. And well, the first time it started was about a month ago, and I was in the house, and she just came into the room naked, and she was like, hey, come and do it with me and I'll pay you.
He offered the reason that his DNA was inside of Jane and inside the scene was because Jane had paid him for sex.
Okay, how much does she pay you?
Yeah, she paid me £200.
£200.
In the village of Fleckney in Leicestershire, police have arrested 25-year-old Craig Keogh on suspicion of the murder of Jane Hings.
Do you have to say anything? How much today's do not mention one question, something which later will learn in the court, until you do so name given evidence. Do you understand everything I've said to you?
Could this local lad really be responsible for the rape and murder of a 72-year-old pensioner? The news has sent shockwaves through the tight-knit community.
How could somebody that I'd grown up with all these years could be physically capable of doing something like that? I was sick and it was horrible. Like, who does things something like that? To such, you know what I mean? You hear about it, but she was an old lady. She was old. He was a young lad.
Keogh has been taken into custody and is being interviewed under caution. With his DNA found on the victim and at the scene, detectives want to know how Craig knows Jane. And he has an explanation.
I was walking through the village, and I saw this lady, and a shopping bag broke, and I hugged her, and then I carried it to the house with her.
Craig told us in an interview that he met Jane when he was down the shops, and that she asked him to pick up some shopping for him and offered him some money for it, and then asked him to walk her dog, Paddy, as well.
But Craig alleges that it wasn't just household chores Jane was paying him for.
And then another time, she's asked me to have sex with her for money. And it happened a month ago, the first time. And then she's asked me to come back a month later. And then it happened again.
Key to the police investigation was the tongue piercing found in Jane's groin.
Have you got any piercings?
I'm ear pierced.
Your rapist? Okay. Anywhere else?
Yeah, tongue pierced.
Your tongue?
Craig goes on to admit that he'd been with Jane the night she died, saying he arrived at her house around 10:30 p.m.
Tell me exactly in detail what happened.
We were watching it on the TV, and then she asked me to have sex with her again. And she's like, I'll pay you more this time. I was like, okay. I didn't think anything of it. And that was it, really. And she said she felt sick, and then I left her.
Craig's detailed account that he had sex with Jane and left her very much alive turns the investigation on its head.
During the course of his interviews, he came up with an explanation as to what happened. And I have to say, it was so bizarre.
Craig also suggested that Jane, whilst alive, was unwell when he left.
What he was saying was that she'd become a little bit wobbly and a little bit unwell, and had then gone back to her bed. He'd then closed the door, and obviously whatever happened afterwards was someone else. Some stranger, no doubt having seen that the door was open, would have gone in there, burgled her, and perhaps killed her. And so that might possibly have been an explanation for what happened.
The interviewing officers had to keep an open mind, but had to probe and get as much detail from him as possible to find out whether it was right or not.
Was Craig telling the truth? Was Jane alive when he left? And so was it someone else who sexually assaulted and killed her? Forensics carry out a detailed search for additional DNA or fingerprints on Jane or in the bungalow.
There was nothing else from the scene, from Jane, from the post-mortem which identified anybody else other than Craig. We'd had all of these things examined, and they only pointed at Craig Keogh and did not point to anybody else.
With no one else in the frame, Craig's movements on the night in question are investigated.
Craig had been on a night out in Oadby, a nearby town.
I think it was between 8 and 8:30 he came in that night. Remember it well because Leicester City played Liverpool on that night, so we had a fair few in. He stood out straight away because he had his baseball cap the other way around, and he was just bouncing up and down.
Staff at the pub said that he appeared agitated, aggressive, and almost as if he was up for a fight. They said he was high on drink and drugs.
Now, this was crucially important evidence because in his interviews, he said that by 10:30 that evening, he was sitting in Jane Hing's living room in Fleckney, watching a war film and having a drink with her. But that was a lie. He was out with his friends. We were able by that process to show that he'd taken cocaine, that he was offering to sell other people cocaine, and that he was complaining about how boring the evening was.
As doubt is cast on Keogh's version of events, police trace his movements after he leaves the pub. He's next seen arriving back in Fleckney at just after 1 a.m.
His friends say that the last time they saw him was when the taxi dropped him off and they assumed he was going home.
But Keogh walks in the opposite direction of his caravan, heading in the direction of Jane's bungalow.
We knew from CCTV that the suspect had walked to Jane's house wearing a baseball cap, and when they were walking away they didn't have it on, and we could see that.
Detectives believe this places Keogh in Jane's bungalow around 1:15 a.m. And when he returns home, he's captured again.
We see him going back into his caravan, carrying something. Now, he goes out again, and he returns out around 2:30 in the morning for another 15 minutes or so, and we are certain that he went back to Jane Hing's house in that period of time. We don't know what he did.
The following morning, Craig is again seen on camera.
The morning after he was seen walking along the street, he was captured on CCTV with a black bin bag.
He's spotted again a few minutes later, but the bag has vanished. What did he dispose of? The police believe it was some of Jane's belongings, but a search of the area reveals nothing.
This is HFM. It's 5 o'clock. This is HFM News. Detectives have been given more time to continue questioning a man on suspicion of murder following the discovery of a pensioner dead in her bungalow in Fleckney on Sunday morning. Officers also believe items were stolen from Miss Hings's bungalow in a black bin liner. They're appealing for villagers to check their gardens and outbuildings in case it's been discarded there. A post-mortem examination has so far failed to identify her cause of death.
With help from the public and CCTV, police are able to piece together Keogh's movements 24 hours after Jane's death. Friends described Craig as splashing his cash, buying them drinks and himself a new tongue bar.
He tried to get rid of Jane's jewellery in trying to sell it. He got rid of her handbag. He was trying to get rid of every last bit of evidence that would connect him to Jane.
He went into Leicester city centre and he actually went to a pawnbroker's. He sold her jewellery for about £100 when the items of jewellery were valued around £1,000.
With enough evidence that Keogh stole items from Jane and had raped her, detectives also believe they have a killer on their hands. But proving he murdered Jane was going to be their biggest challenge.
So far as murder was concerned, we had no cause of death. We were unable to show how she died, whether it was deliberate or accidental, forensically at that stage.
In the village of Fleckney, 25-year-old Craig Keogh has been charged with burglary, murder, and the rape of pensioner Jane Hings. The news that Jane was sexually assaulted in her home has been made public.
The community were on edge already, knowing that an old lady had been murdered in her home, but then once the true nature of it came out, people were really worried.
When I found out that information, it just floored me. It played on my mind all night. You know, a woman of that age, why could that happen?
I'd say the villagers would be distressed because a majority of them are similar sort of age to Miss Hinks. And there's quite a few vulnerable people out there as well, and it obviously upset them, but also put a bit of fear into them as well, that this could happen on their doorstep.
Within days of his arrest, Keogh is brought before a judge and the charges read.
He pleaded not guilty to all the charges, so that was murder, 2 counts of rape and burglary.
Keogh is remanded in custody and a date set for his trial. But the work of the prosecution is only just beginning.
This was horrific violence perpetrated on a very frail old lady whilst she was still alive. And there was then the added complication of trying to prove how she died.
So one of Craig Keogh's lines of defence actually referred to him knowing Jane Hings, and he said that she paid him for sex, and that was the reason that he went around and claimed she was still alive when he left her bungalow on that night.
Experts believe that Jane has been smothered with a pillow, and proving it was Keogh is imperative to the case.
The DNA on the pillows was of saliva, and so we could show that Jane's saliva was on the pillows. That was all.
Typically with a material object, you can't get fingerprints from it. And it's really difficult. For us as investigators, we sat there believing that the pillowcases were our murder weapon. How could we prove that?
With concern that Keogh might get away on a technicality, the police and prosecution reach out to forensic specialists.
Now, our pillowcases had been sat at the bottom of an evidence bag, sat in the exhibit store for, at this point, 4 months. They weren't laid out flat like you'd see in a movie or anything like this. This is a pillowcase shoved in the bottom of an evidence bag.
But as we got nearer to trial, we discovered a new scientific development.
Leicestershire Police said to me they had a pillowcase that they were interested in trying to develop some fingerprints on. They wanted to know whether a novel process I'd been researching was appropriate for this type of exhibit. I recommended that they tried vacuum metal deposition, and I also directed them towards Gloucestershire Police, who had a vacuum metal deposition machine that they could use and a trained operator, which is probably the best technique that we're aware of that gives you a chance of getting fingerprints on fabrics.
Vacuum metal deposition involves vaporizing gold and zinc in a vacuum chamber. The metallic particles are attracted to the fabric and form a negative image of finger marks wherever it has been touched.
So what you have here is the image of the pillowcase as it's come out of the vacuum metal deposition machine. These dark regions where you have quite a lot of zinc deposition, and you have these light regions where zinc simply hasn't deposited. But it shows whereabouts the pillowcase has been gripped, and it also enables you to say, well, it's been touched there, so you can then target other techniques such as DNA recovery for those techniques.
We were able, therefore, to show that the pillow had been held in a position that you wouldn't hold a pillow ordinarily in order to put it over Jane Hing's head to kill her.
So that proved our murder weapon. We had Keogh's finger marks on the short edge and Jane's saliva in the middle of the pillow.
But the question is, would it be enough to convict Keogh? The trial begins at Birmingham Crown Court, and Jane's friends come face to face with Keogh.
Craig was just deadpan through the whole entire time. Not an ounce of remorse, not any kind of emotion. He showed nothing.
When Craig sat in the dock, he was expressionless. It was difficult to really see any signs of emotion.
Obviously, Jane's friends are of her age, so are a lot older and didn't want to go and sit through all of that. So I went and sat for her. I didn't want Craig to think that nobody cared about her. I wanted to be seen that, you know, she meant something to somebody.
Craig had denied all along that he was responsible for raping and murdering Jane Hings. In fact, his version of events was at complete odds with the prosecution's case, the police case. He had said that he had gone to see Jane to have sex. He said that they had watched a film together that night, a war film. Checks were made, and there was no war film on TV. It was a complete and utter lie.
As the trial unfolds, the defence tried to paint a picture of Jane.
Craig Keogh was describing Jane Hings as being a sexually promiscuous, drunken woman who liked nothing more than spending her pension money on having intercourse with a young man. We discovered she didn't drink alcohol. There was no alcohol in her bloodstream after her death.
So the jury were then saying all the mobility aids that Jane had in the house, the fact that she couldn't walk between rooms without needing a walking stick or a frame.
So the idea of her being interested in active sexual activity was laughable.
Central to the prosecution case is proving that the sexual contact was non-consensual.
So we instructed an expert in sexual injuries to examine her body. And as a result of that, we were able to show that the sexual activity was not consensual activity, and it would have caused her significant amounts of pain, and it happened when she was alive.
And it was for this reason they believe Keogh decided to kill Jane.
She must have cried out when that happened, and he must have wanted not to be caught and to complete the act. And we know he did complete the act because there was semen within her body. And I expect that during the course of that sexual assault upon her, he decided to kill her because she wouldn't shut up.
Establishing that Keogh had the motive and opportunity to kill Jane, the prosecution introduces what they believe is the murder weapon.
The scientists went the extra mile on this one because they could show that finger marks left by Keogh were on the short, straight edges at the side, and they were gripped like this and applied. And they then took it one step further to look for the amylase staining, that's the protein staining in the middle, to show that Jane had exhaled a lot and it given out a lot of moisture from her breath, indicating that that's where she was smothered. And then when the scientists came to court to explain it, the jury was sat there like, oh wow, this is really impactful.
With the prosecution evidence built against him, Keogh remained silent.
Craig sat there very quiet. He chose not to give evidence. He chose not to be cross-examined by prosecutor, and he showed no remorse, even when the horrific details were read out of what he had done.
Craig Keogh could not offer any evidence which the jury could look at and say that he was not guilty. He couldn't offer any alibi, and he couldn't offer any plausible explanation as to why this had happened or why he was suspected of it.
After 5 days, the jury is sent to deliberate. Presented with all the evidence, they have to decide whether the marks at the edge of the pillow and all the new scientific data prove that the young man in front of them is a murderer.
There are two choices for a jury here. Either he went into that house and raped her and burgled the property and then left, and a random stranger came in and smothered her, or the person who raped her smothered her. That's the choice.
Even though you've listened to the whole trial and you know he's guilty, the evidence says he's guilty, those minutes, hours of waiting to hear them words, it's still nerve-wracking, you know, because they could come back with not guilty.
After 4 hours, the jury returns.
They came back and unanimously said that he was guilty of 2 counts of rape, murder, and burglary.
When the jury came back, he was plainly shocked. Craig Keogh stood there, and when sentence was imposed, he stood there with an element of resignation, but he didn't seem at any stage to show any kind of remorse. No sadness for her, no sadness for his own family, who appeared to be very decent people. From the beginning to the end, it seemed to me he was entirely focused on himself.
Keogh was given a life sentence and will only be eligible for parole after 32 years. But for all involved, this case has taken its toll.
When I went into Jane Hing's house, I was struck by the peace and tranquility in which she'd lived her life. She was a very simple lady. Beside her bed on one side was her Bible and a crucifix. And on the other side, as she had gone to bed, no doubt like every other night, she'd left her teeth on the side of the bed. And imagining just being in your own bedroom, in the comfort of your own home, and having a young, strong man, plainly intoxicated and under the influence of drunks, coming into your room about 1:15 in the morning, waking you from your sleep, must have been terrifying. that, I think, stays with me.
This case will stick with me. It's one that the community will remember for a long time. It's one that the police officers who went to will remember for a long time.
I've covered numerous murder trials over the last 25 years. The rape of anyone is distressing. It's shocking. But this was particularly shocking because it involved the rape of an elderly woman.
I've been asked many times what are my feelings towards Craig, and I have none, is the simple answer. I don't hate him because that's an emotion. I literally have no emotion towards him. But to think of what he did, it broke my heart to try and think about the fear that would have been going through our mind at the time. And then to be smothered with her own pillow. Jane was cremated, and I put her ashes in an urn that sits on my mantelpiece so she can watch over Paddy every day until the day that he sadly joins her, in which case I will get him cremated and scatter their ashes someplace nice so they can be together again.